All right, welcome to our webinar today on academic esports. And thank you so much to Mastery Coding for their partnership and sponsorship of today's webinar. My name is Laura DiNardo, and I am the Senior Manager for Strategic Partnerships with CTE. Again, we're super excited for the first of our series of 3 webinars in partnership with Mastery Coding focused on esports. Today, we are going to kick it off, and then in September and October, we're going to have follow-up webinars focused on student gamers and research in academic esports. I'm going to go ahead and play a brief video from our sponsor, Mastery Coding.
I'm almost dead. He's right here. He's right here. I need some help over here. Anybody? On your left. Bro, keep up.
You're the slowpoke, not me.
Funny how girls always have to save the boys.
No way.
Are you kidding me?
Hey, enough chit chat. We got a game to win.
I hope you enjoyed watching our Pathway Esports video. I'm Olivia Dobbs with Mastery Coding, and I have the privilege of taking you on a quick tour. Show someone something like this, or this, or this, and everyone is sure to be impressed. With the Mastery Esports Game and Make curriculum, students can actually make assets like these while learning career-ready skills. At the same time, they'll be earning industry-recognized certifications that open the door for them to step into high-paying jobs. As you probably realize, every video game needs code to function, and students love video games. That's why we use gaming as a gateway to career and college readiness. With our materials, your students can play, learn, and compete with games they love in a safe and productive setting. It's where critical thinking meets project-based fun. And when we harness the academic power of their favorite games, students not only become better players, more strategic thinkers, and more engaged learners, they are also provided a vision that they too can one day make a career out of their passion. When students learn to make alchemical labs, code zombie AI, or design the mast of a pirate ship, they are actually learning the same skills necessary to become tomorrow's architects, scientists, and engineers. Through engaging courses, Mastery Esports students gain the opportunity to become the next generation of Margaret Hamiltons, Nikola Teslas, Shirley Jacksons, and Alan Turings. From automotive to architecture to healthcare, and on, owning these skills empowers students to work in industries across the spectrum. And it's not just Google, Apple, and Microsoft either. Every company is now a technology company that needs people with these skills. It's fun, it's engaging, and it's educational. So tap the power of standards-based, project-led, research-rooted learning and turn your gamers into industry-certified makers. Prepare your students for the jobs of the future now. Find out how to bring the power of Game and Make curriculum to your school at masterycoding.com.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get to hearing from our panelists. And, oops, sorry about that. As another reminder, we have those 2 upcoming webinars, and I'm going to share more about those again later in our presentation. And I actually am going to hop back to that a little bit later as well. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jill Ranucci, who is our facilitator and moderator for today. And I'm going to have her introduce you to our panelists.
Laura, thank you so much and welcome everybody. Thank you also to Mastery Coding. It's a rare opportunity that we get sponsored webinars, and of course the sponsoring really helps out the Association for Career and Technical Education, and specifically the division of ETED that we now have that area of interest for academic esports. So again, thank you to our sponsors, and thank you, before we even get started, to the 5 directors that were so willing to come on today to talk to our audience and attendees, as well as everybody that'll get to see this following the presentation. Just as a couple of things, Laura, I know her background was a little iffy today, so this will sit live, or that you can pull it up at any time. It's being recorded, and you'll be able to watch it on the ACT website. Everybody who signed up, even if they weren't in attendance today, will get an automatic link. So this will live on that page. So today I'm going to, in no specific order, I'm going to introduce our distinguished panelists. You can see from the slide who they are, and I don't want to pronounce any names incorrectly. So Sari, I'm going to let you go ahead and please introduce yourself. You might want to tell us a little bit about your position, university, and then we'll just go right down the list.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. I'm Sari Keitlin. I am with Full Sail University. I oversee their esports program there. I've been with Full Sail about 16 years now. My background is on developing the organization's brand initiatives and development within the entertainment media space. We started formalizing our esports efforts around 2015, and our program is comprehensive, but leads with a career-focused approach first. Full Sail is a university in Orlando, Florida that focuses on careers in entertainment, media, arts, and technology. So we're definitely unique, and all of our degree programs relate to the entertainment space. We've had game design and development degrees for about 30 years. So gamers make a really big part of our cohesive culture. We also have our original degree program was in live event production. And so at this point, that a lot of those students graduating from there are going to work in the esports space. For us, we look at esports as an evolution of the entertainment industry, and all of the degree programs that associate with it and all the career paths that associate with it have really provided a lot of opportunity for our students. And I know that they can for students in these areas as well. So excited to talk to everybody.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think, Ian, you're up next.
All right, great. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. My name is Ian Escalante. I'm the Director of Esports at the University of Arizona. I arrived at the University of Arizona in November of last year, but previous to that, I was the Director of Esports at the Savannah College of Art and Design. My background is in sports management. My big passion and one of the biggest reasons I'm here at UA is because I really want to help students transition from the club mentality into the next level, what it takes to be a student athlete, teaching them the pathways that they can, take through the university, helping guide them through these awesome but really tough times as well, and just installing the discipline it takes to be a student athlete, but also letting them see the rewards that come from that. The University of Arizona is just really getting started into varsity esports, but we have a really big focus into diversity, equity, and inclusion. All of our teams that we are forming are currently formed with the mentality that we want to offer opportunities to both men and women to play on the teams, and so we're really happy that we've done that so far, and we've seen a lot of great results.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian. I think, Mark, you're next.
Hi, folks. My name is Mark Deppy. I direct the esports program at UC Irvine. We are one of the earlier adopters of college esports. We launched our program in Arena in 2016. We have 5 pillars for our program. We compete with coaches, scholarships, team psychologists, exercise physiologists. We support the research mission of the university and provide a great connection point between our faculty and graduate students and the world of games and esports. Our 3rd pillar is around community focus, and we're going to be going more into that as we reach out to our high school communities, our clubs on campus, our alumni now. 4th pillar is around entertainment. So we have the beautiful stream and broadcast. We have a recreational facility on campus. And 5th and finally, we are focused on injecting our talent into the career space. So we help with networking, career development, resume workshops, things like that, all to help our students get where they want to go after their time at UCI. So we're a public school, one of the UC schools in Southern California, and happy to be here today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Josh, you're next on our list.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. So I am Josh Dieger from West Virginia University. So we actually just started up our program in October of this previous year. So I've been here since August. We kind of have our pillars based off a competition. And so we're really looking to bring in a bunch of students who are looking to try to be the best at what they can do. And then we want to showcase that, when you put the skill and you put the effort that is necessary for you to play at a high level, you can take that and transfer it to any job and be able to succeed in that field. And then next, we do have our academic piece. So we are just starting with our minor that is launching in the fall of 23. And then we also have a major that is launching shortly after. So we're really excited about that. And we're bringing a bunch of people and we're just trying to be all hands on deck when it comes to our academic piece. And so we also love our community, and that's from our alumni, from our club team, and then also everyone who's around us. And we're building facilities to actually incorporate everyone in West Virginia to be a part of that. And so that's one of our big initiatives and projects that we have coming up shortly. And then for the most part, West Virginia is just really trying to be a big space. And we're just trying to bring on a bunch of Big 12 schools and show them, this is a reason to get behind esports, and hopefully they adapt here in the future.
Thank you so much, Josh. And before I mention Sky, just so that everybody knows, we're talking about university directors from the East Coast all the way to the island of Hawaii. So I know it's much earlier there, but Sky, take us away.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so happy to be here. I'm Sky Kapaloa. I'm a recently graduated PhD student at the University of Hawaii. My area of interest is actually in esports research. So that's what I did my dissertation on, was on the collegiate space. Of course, I was actually with Mark during my fieldwork at UCI. And, now that I have finished my work at the PhD level, I am charged with looking over the entire systems operation at the University of Hawaii, which includes 10 campuses. And for us, we really are looking at this topic of esports in a slightly different way, because we are a school of indigenous learning. So we are trying to understand what ways does esports fit into our culture, into our island life. And also looking at it as an economic discussion and diversifying our economy in Hawaii, because COVID really did hit us quite hard because of the tourist industry was hit very hard. So for us, we are out, doing a lot of work with high schools. We have over 40 high schools that have competitive either clubs or somewhat, constituted programs. And so we are working with a number of different schools, both at the charter level, but of course at the public level as well. And so I'm very happy to be here to discuss this issue.
Thank you so much, Sky. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to some questions that I've discussed with some of the directors. Others have seen the questions, so everybody's aware of what we're going to be discussing today. So I think the first one is we have CTE teachers and administrators, and we know there's a gap with gaming on their campuses. And what we're trying to do is fill that gap. So then, in other words, we don't just have clubs and students gaming, because often, as everyone knows, teachers, administrators, the district level leaders, they just think this is gaming. So what do you have in your toolkit that might help secondary educators realize that if they adopt an academic esports pathway, this is actually something very positive for students' futures that can lead to careers? So some advice that maybe we can give to districts, and we're going to just go around the horn again, starting with Sari. Do you have any advice for the districts that are right now attending?
Sure. So like I was saying earlier, what we view it at Full Sail is really esports is an evolution of the entertainment industry. And we really feel that way. That's where, audiences are kind of digesting and receiving a ton of their content. And that's where a lot of the jobs are really going for folks that were working in this space. So historically, from a gaming perspective, of course, we've always known from the development and the publisher side of things, creating the games themselves. And that is an extremely lucrative career opportunity and has major connections, obviously, to the math space, coding and development space. And it continues to be, and will always, I think, continue to be an extremely lucrative career opportunity for folks in that space. Bridging that gap, I think, from gaming to esports in regards to what you can provide for students and how that can really accentuate what they're doing in their career, is to just understand the concept of most students, and obviously that's changing in these days, which is great. But most students have grown up playing games by themselves. They're playing at home. They're doing things on their own. They haven't necessarily been coached before. They haven't necessarily played as part of a team before and haven't adopted those levels of communication. So it's understandable why administration will kind of view gaming in that sort of self-contained type space. What esports provides a lot of these kids who've really grown and adapted to have these strong analytical strategic skills in regards to that gameplay is incorporating the idea of communication, teamwork, understanding how to improve, understanding how to balance healthy habits, both from a mental wellness perspective and from a physical wellness perspective. It is not the gaming that maybe folks once thought it was, and it provides these tremendous amount of opportunities for folks that might not be participating in your traditional sports programs, but still need the benefits of what those traditional sports programs provides. Esports does provide these things. And so supporting from the perspective of both infrastructure and technology that's needed to establish on these locations brings everybody out of their homes to play together in person, to establish that level of connectivity and communication, and kind of a strategic approach to the competitive side of things that is definitely different than the independent gamer that might be experiencing at home. And so that's really the area that I always try to say. Most places are lacking infrastructure, and the technology is incredibly important. But the biggest thing to understand is this is an incredible pathway to career success, whether as a competitive player or working behind the scenes of the space. And the more opportunities you play for students to be together in person and be able to collaborate from a LAN experience with that connectivity and with that level of communication, the better prepared they are to continue to pursue careers that happen to lead into this space.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Ian, what do you have to add to that?
Well, it's hard to follow up on that. That's pretty comprehensive on a lot of amazing things that esports offers. But another thing that I do, kind of jumping off what was just spoken about, is the way that we view engagement, right? Esports is a great way to push engagement on campus in ways that, like was mentioned before, isn't traditionally held, right? And those engagement levels are really big into boosting our retention numbers within school, right? I mean, I can just talk from my personal experience that I do know that there was very few to none of my student athletes that once they engaged with the program, once they locked in, once they started making friends through this social space, everything went up. Their ability to, start and going to class goes up, their grades go up, their interest in finishing college, high school, or any level of education that they're pushing through goes up because they're engaged in more ways than just what's expected of them, right? They're engaged in something that is cultural. They're engaged in something that they want to be a part of, and that is so beneficial because for the vast majority of esports players, it was a solitary experience previously. That's no longer the case. This is something that's being built up on college campuses and high school campuses to be really taking that next level step into being a sport, into being a part of the entertainment industry, but a social step. So that's something that I think is extraordinarily exciting, and I'm seeing those dividends right away immediately. They're so easy to see right up front.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mark.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, and this comes from like trying to think about the life after COVID or life with COVID. We're 6 years in, we're starting our 7th year this fall. And I think community engagement, finding out what students want, like it's different now than it was in 2016 when we started our program. So my advice to teachers and administrators is sit down with your students and talk to them. What are they interested in? What are they looking for? Some might want to compete and play. Some might want to do team management. Some might want to build out an influencer and streaming production thing. So my first recommendation is find where the interest is, because that's the secret sauce to esports, is that games are so important to young people, and there's so many people. But you have to meet them where they are, was what we all say. And so talk to your students and find what they want to do. That's the only thing I would add.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Josh, do you have anything there in West Virginia?
Yeah, but it's really tough when I keep coming behind all these wonderful speakers. But a couple of things that I would like to just throw out there is just access to, students of minorities. sometimes those groups do not have the technology to really be a part of this. And so when you're able to build that infrastructure at your school, you're now giving them access and reach, and they can start to provide a little bit of a different niche and be able to participate in these type of events. And then we're also talking about, esports does help students stay out of trouble. If you want to think more at your traditional sports, your football players, your basketball players, they got to make grades because they play on the basketball or football team. We can do the same thing in esports, helping kids stay focused in school, graduate with good GPAs, and then have that place where they can go and compete and be a part of that culture. And so that's something that I think that we as directors, and we're hopefully can trickle it down to everyone else in a high school space, is that we're trying to change the culture of what is a gamer. And it's not necessarily the nerdy person, but like we even have our WVU football team who is trying to play our best Madden player and they keep losing, right? But that's really good for the rest of West Virginia because they love West Virginia football. And so we're able to show that, okay, it's just not gamers who play these games, but people in the traditional sport world are also being a part of this. And so when administrators start to see that, they start to grasp a little bit more of esports and they start to gravitate a little bit more with it as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. And Sky, I know I had a discussion with you a week or so ago because you've been doing a lot of research. So can you give us some, maybe from the research end, what you found, including that academic esports and how that can contribute to high school pathway programs?
Yeah, for sure. At least on the research side, how we talk about these particular students is really important because not all of them consider themselves student athletes, and not all of them also consider themselves gamers. And so I think for us to understand in what ways are we crafting our programs that is going to be inclusive to all the different ways that these students imagine their interactions with these particular technologies is going to be important. And that's not saying that we don't see them as student athletes, but it really is a complicated space in which these students are really crafting identities that we have not really touched upon in higher education yet. So of course, it is esports, and the word sports does complicate a lot of this. If it was called something else, we might, be having a different conversation. But for us at the University of Hawaii, one thing that's very important for me in running the program is that I don't necessarily see my program as a student athlete run endeavor, but I see it more as a communication, new media, entertainment project. And for me, that's really quite important because a lot of the participation of our students in our program really comes from that 99% who do content creation, media production. The 1% are in our quote unquote sport competition side of things. And so that's really important for me to really highlight, is that we as educators and directors have the ability to think broadly about how we want to think about those pathways from high school into college via esports in this project. Yeah.
Thank you. Our next question is in regards to, as I mentioned to the panelists, just so the attendees know, the esports area of interest is in the ETED division, which is Engineering Technology Education Division. And thank you, Laura, for putting in there so people know a little bit more about joining the ACTE. It's a great organization. I've been a member for 25 probably plus years in CTE. And because it is in this division, because it encompasses all the different technologies, and we know there's so many different aspects of technology involved in the back end as well as the front end of broadcasting, games, as well as the technology piece that has been linked to gaming, coding, et cetera, as you probably saw in the Mastery Coding sponsorship film. So I think we're gonna kind of shift a little bit. And what are your feelings about how well and what kind of advice would you give, whether it's technology in the broadcasting end of things or technology in the coding or the back end of things, or just the technical skills that are needed to be a good gamer? So I think, Ian, we're going to start with you this time so you don't have to follow. And I think we're going to just mix it up a little bit. So go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of technical skills that come with it, a lot of social skills as well. I mean, from a sport management perspective, from a student athlete perspective, I mean, these skills are invaluable because a lot of them aren't taught, right? That you're not in that space to really be taught anything for the most part when you're coming up as a ladder grind gamer. You're just doing it on yourself, you're just following your passions. But when you get into a specific program that has a focus on that, that has a focus on the pathways that can be pushed through this, you really open a lot of eyes, right? So the skills that I inherently see are, well, I mean, obviously basic understanding of programming, I mean, I even see a lot of students get really jump off their inspiration for the games themselves and how they inspire them through art and all different types of ways. These are all these different incredible skills that you can get from it, and art is a lot more technical than I certainly thought. I learned that at the College of Art and Design. A lot of it is a skill that is taught. And I mean, from the engineering background, I mean, that's way above my poor sport management sports ball mind, but there's incredible connections that come from that. As was said in the presentation before, gaming is really all these different types of engineering, coding, mathematics, and showcasing the opportunity for students to follow and learn that through their passions is something that engages them deeper, right? The connections are a lot easier. I mean, I give examples all the time. I've never been great at math, but the only math I was ever good at was statistics, because I could connect to that with baseball. It made sense to me. The same thing applies to a lot of students here who maybe are struggling to understand coding and engineering, and they can't see it at that base level, but when they're able to link it with their passions, it all clicks, right? Because they're able to make that something that is suddenly super interesting, that is suddenly super creative, that is suddenly something that they love. Those connections are so important, because really passion has to drive you through a lot of the harder parts of education. So understanding what the end product is a great tool to use for students to get through the rough parts of what they're trying to learn.
Excellent. Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, great question. I think, I mean, to be an athlete, and I see a question in the chat about what it takes to be an athlete. You have to be really good at the game. You have to be one of the best, and that takes thousands of hours. But I would say that's available to a small group of people. And I think there's only a certain amount of opportunities there. I think in my experience, and we hire, I have 21 athletes, I have 10 interns, 10 student staff. The jobs that I think you can train for and prepare for are on the content creation side: graphic design, videography, digital production. We have team managers. We have a shoutcasting manager. Lots of different roles within our program that I do think you can intentionally become good at and develop your skills for. And every pro team out there in the pro esports world is hiring people for those roles. Social media, who's going to build my brand, who's going to make people care about what we're doing, who's going to tell our story and represent us well. So those are the things I think teachers can be very aware of and setting students up for. They'll make your club look awesome. They'll make your school look awesome. And even though we don't recruit for those yet, I certainly hire them. And I think those are some of the most employable people you can find in our industry.
Excellent. Sky.
Yeah, I would definitely reiterate the idea that, for us at University of Hawaii Esports, when it comes to career technical education, it is actually a social and technical issue. I can't separate the two. When you teach the technology, you actually also have to make sure that the students are understanding of how that technology is situated within a culture or within a team environment. And so for us at University of Hawaii Esports, I think I'm quite proud that we've been able to, over the past 2 years, really develop a program that has sustained itself largely through mediated communications through Discord, which is, it's a very difficult thing because a lot of our programs have been, for the very long time, been face-to-face, shoulder-to-shoulder within our own arenas, within our own geographical locations on campus. But over the past 2 years, what has come to be an important highlight is that it's really the soft skills, I believe, that has shined among our students, because for them to be able to sustain our program via just Discord, right, via just mediated communications, really requires the students and required a lot of mentoring to develop that type of communication, sensitivity, empathy, and cohesiveness as a team to work and develop themselves. And so for me, we talk about broadcasting, we talk about streaming, we talk about media production and programming. That is always going to be important in society when it comes to new media jobs. But at the end of the day, you also want to develop students who are able to work in mediated teams that are also sympathetic, multicultural, understanding across cultures, right? I think a lot of people don't realize that esports is actually quite global, right? It's not just something that's localized within the English-speaking world, right? A large part of the esports scene is quite developed within China, South Korea, and upcoming with Japan and Malaysia and Philippines. And so for us in Hawaii, we've really had to touch and also develop that intercultural component within esports. And again, like I said, I'm quite proud of that because I think our students do quite well in that area.
Excellent. Josh, before we move to soft skills, what do you have something in the technical arena that you're seeing with your collegiate groups?
Yeah, so on the technical side of things, we're seeing more of our collegiate people being able to articulate and communicate within the team environment from working with us. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces is that most of these students, they come in with not having that teamwork or ability to cooperate with a group, show up on time, and do the little things that you would think that you would get from, you know, your traditional sports. And we're able to put that in the esports settings. And then they're able to take that to the technology side and be able to work cohesively within a group. And so that's what really makes our students a little bit more beneficial when they're getting these internships. They already have these soft skills and they can bring it into those internships and they can start working with these big companies and then they're able to, you know, succeed in that way.
Thank you, Sari. And I'm going to kind of ask this in really a direct, because at my age, I play games, but esports is not a game that I play on my pads. How much technical skill to be a either very competent player or just be a recreational player? What type of technical skills really are needed? Because I see kids all the time, you know, on their switches and on their phones and gaming and so forth. And to me, it seems like I know there's got to be the eye-hand coordination, but what are those technical skills that they really need to master?
Sure. First of all, you can totally play esports from your iPad or tablet if you're already gaming. So let's not rule that out. Okay. I think that's still in the future and in the cards. From a technical perspective, the level of technical proficiency that's really required to enter into this space is higher level than I think most people realize. And in addition to that, I don't think a lot of people realizes how much technological proficiency your students already have if they're doing this. And so it's the aspect of, I think there's a misconception, and I understand why there would be. We're like, you know what a computer looks like? You turn it on, you download the game, you click start, and you play the game. And that is not it. And it's the whole holistic concept of being able to link together, being able to link chat while you're being able to play. There's a software component, there's coding components to understand how you're going to communicate with your teammates. These are not plug and play scenarios. And the students and kids, quite honestly, are coming equipped with this level of knowledge. There's an entrepreneurial component to being in esports, start to finish, no matter which level you really want to be at, whether it's a highly competitive level, whether there's a content creation focus. For all intents and purposes, it's an entrepreneurial perspective that I don't think has been available to kids, especially at the K through 12 age, in any other industry outside of gaming and esports. So they are doing everything from, again, setting up comms to be able to interact with the people that they're playing with while they're playing. They're being able to set up their machines to make sure their refresh rate is at the highest speed that it needs to be, working through their settings so that they're not at a disadvantage. But in addition to that, a lot of them are streaming their games. They're streaming what they're doing. And that includes everything from creating overlays and putting them through in real time, being able to understand and how to operate something like OBS, open source broadcasting, to understand how to communicate to your audience, how to communicate the gameplay that you're doing, and how to really understand how to tie all the things together of both talking with your teammates, making sure your machine is set up to be at the best possible space that it can, and being able to showcase what it is that's happening at the same time. So even if we're not on the content creation side of things, we're streaming matches. These kids are streaming what they're playing. And the aspect of what it takes to be able to do that, I think is, we take for granted, I think, because we've kind of been around it for so long. But to know that there's 11 and 12-year-old kids that can sit out there and can wire together an entire LAN setup like it's nothing is really something you wouldn't have heard of at that age 20 years ago. And so I think it's the concept of really being able to support everything from just essentially basic coding, connecting Discord through your gameplay or however you want to use for comms, being able to understand what you're streaming, how you're streaming, what's required from streaming from every person's PC that's on your team, and what they are going to do to be able to intersect with each other, and being able to really put out there what it is that you're working on and how you're doing it. It's a pretty phenomenal setup, and it's required, yes, for them to even be able to get started, but I promise you these students already have it. And so the idea of being able to support them and support that infrastructure and have them come in and set up LAN at your school or set up LAN in your facility and connect all these PCs to be able to play together, even at that basic level, is a big undertaking for someone that might not be in the space, but is a huge valued skill set of these kids to be able to continue and take that forward as they continue into their careers.
Thank you so much. And Josh, we're going to go back to you for a minute because I know you can talk to this from that player and coach role too, because Sari brought up some really important points there. Because yes, you're saying maybe I could at my age participate in esports. I'm kind of still hesitant on that one, but you know what? My granddaughters keep telling me, come on, Omi, come on, Omi. So yeah, maybe one of these days I will, but they pull up a game, 9 and 6 years old, and they beat me every single time. So we're not sure about that. But anyways, go ahead, Josh.
Hey, mobile gaming's really it's growing. So, you know, the iPads, they're out there. You can compete still. And so from a coach's perspective, and we're talking about from our higher tier collegiate players to kind of our middle of the pack, there's a big difference. And I think a lot of things that we talk about is that esports, these players have a ranking system that they see on a day in and day out basis that kind of tells them where they're at compared to everyone else in the world. So a lot of people that are in K through 12 right now, some of your students are probably at the top 10% of the country, and you guys don't really know that. And you're talking about students that are able to mechanically function within the game at the age of 16 is big, but then they're able to mentally be able to dissect everything that's going on and be able to mechanically focus and make a role and play their role and do it in different ways. And that's really important, I think, is the mental capacity for some of these higher tier players to be able to understand what is going on in the game, articulate that with everyone that is playing with them, and still be able to function and do their role of their team. And now we're talking about these players are able to mechanically be excellent. They're also able to communicate. They're also able to mentally stay focused. And we're talking about when we get into some of our games, like for Rocket League, for CCA, we're talking about we're playing like 7 games before we can even be done with the day. And so that is a lot going on for a 4-hour, 5-hour standpoint. And sometimes you don't even get a break. So for students to be able to mentally be prepared and stay focused, and when they're exhausted, still be able to do these minor things, it's a lot. And I think that's what a lot of people don't really realize, is that our sport is very mentally taxing rather than physically. And when we get to that mental standpoint, and how ready are your players going to be? And I think that's where we come in as coaches and directors, is that we have to prepare these young men and women before they get into that match, because sometimes once that match happens, we are so hands off, because that's how our culture of gaming goes compared to a traditional sport. You know, I could be a basketball coach and I can yell at you in the middle of the game to get you to snap back in and get it back together. In esports, my mic's cut off and I just got to let you do you and I have to be ready to say, like, I prepared you as best as I can to do the job that is needed.
Thank you, Josh. And this time for our final question, before we just go into a little bit more discussion and then answer some questions. I've spoken with a lot of industry over the past 25 years. Of course, we've worked with a lot of industries in CTE, and The latest discussion that I had with industry, it was actually a webinar that was done for ACTE, was with academic integration, but they were talking generally in the world of technology. Met quite a few industries, and the thread kept coming back to the soft skills that are needed, that we need to really start focusing on with our students in that K through 12, particularly middle school and high school students. And one of the biggest things was, of course, communication. Now, I've heard from all 5 of you over and over again, communication, communication, communication. What are the other soft skills? And please include the communication that's learned also, because we know that, you know, that's needed in esports. But Mark, can you talk a little bit about some other soft skills as well as communication?
Absolutely. Yeah, our program helped kind of develop and stand up NASEF, the North America Scholastic Esports Federation. There's some research that was done as part of that to try to understand the outcomes that exist when there's some structured esports in the high school space. The number one improvement, the area that was most beneficial, was socio-emotional learning. This idea that students learned that in this team environment, often when you play by yourself online, you can yell at your teammates. It can be a pretty hostile environment sometimes, maybe frequently. But in team environments, what we saw is that with coaching and kind of conversation around your strategy to win the game, students learned that they needed to regulate that. They had to adjust for their teammates. And so if you're coming across as hostile or aggressive, or not considering kind of the perspective of the teammates, you're not going to win as often. And so that was the number one outcome that that we saw in high school spaces. But almost across the board, there was improvements in interest in STEM and really, really great outcomes pretty much universally. From my perspective on a college campus, I mean, communication's crucial. Things that I think are really interesting are, one is the tenacity that's necessary to play a game over and over and over. And the game's built to match you against people your skill level. So you're losing about 50% of the time. And so I feel like that requires an incredible amount of bravery and kind of fortitude to play games where you lose half the time. If you're an elite basketball player, elite football player, you win all your games as a kid. You just win. You're just always good. Not the case in esports. So I think tenacity is really important. We mentioned communication. And as part of that, I'd break that down and just quickly say that dealing with conflict, understanding how to work through challenges. Again, these are students that have yet to have a lot of coaching. There hasn't been a lot of esports coaching in their youth. And so suddenly they're having frustrations with their teammates and having to reconcile that. And that could be the most urgent need of the team. It's not practice. It's not getting better at the game. It's being able to convey your frustrations in a safe, productive environment, have them heard, and maybe have your teammates understand where you're coming from. So those are there's a lot of really great benefits that come from this. All the same stuff you see in traditional sports, minus maybe the cardiovascular stuff. But overall, there's so many great benefits.
Yeah, and oh, sorry.
ahead.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
I'd love to follow up on that. I think there's so many things that those soft skills, those communication leads directly into things that are actually hard to teach, such as leadership and confidence, right? Especially within the gaming space, you know, because it's so individualized, usually, or at least when you start, you don't have the ability to learn the soft skills of leadership that do come out in team environments. People learn how to discuss with each other, but more importantly, just like Mark just said, people learn how to have conflict with each other and learn how to best adjust in order to lead forward your entire team to get to the common goal, right? People learn that leadership is give and take. Leadership is showing how to do something rather than you follow me just because I'm the best player on the team. That rarely happens. I know on my teams, my captains are usually not the most, skilled right away, right? A lot of them are the best communicators, the best people that are able to unite the team. And that's something that I knew when they first came into my programs was not the case. Most programs, if you just do a full walk-ons, everybody's kind of quiet, everybody's kind of individualistic, they're really calling things that are only useful to them. And as the program goes along, you start to notice that people start to take those leadership roles and they start to say what's useful to others. They start to understand their teammates better, and then able to go out of their way to help them because it helps the whole team, right? And these are things that I love from a sports management perspective, from a sports psychology perspective. And the thing I love the most, I mean, is just the confidence I see erupt. And I mean that from my student athletes. They come in traditionally, we're stereotyping them, they come in rather quiet, a little bit introverted, a little bit shy to express themselves in this sort of space, you know. But towards the end, 1-2 years into the program, 1-2 years into the team, this confidence has gone up a whole lot better, right? They're able to express themselves without fear. They're able to be themselves, you know, because they know they're in an environment that accepts that. They see like-minded individuals and they don't feel so alone, right? They don't feel so different. They feel like there's tons of people that are like them, and they go out of their way to start finding those people. I've had plenty of teachers even come back to me and reach out and say, since they've been in the program, I mean, their presentation skills have gone up. Why? Because we force all of our students to talk to each other, interact with each other, to present and lead team discussions. Those things are confidence boosters. And I think it's so hard to find those opportunities just in life in general. You don't really get those chances to take leadership opportunities and to build your confidence in an education environment because you're just learning. But esports offers that opportunity to, I think, a sector of students that need it most.
Thank you. I can only agree with that. And that's why we're trying to put this into our CTE space, because often we have those students that really need those opportunities. Does anybody else, before we answer a couple questions, because we are getting close to the end of our time here, do any of the other directors want to jump in on the soft skills discussion? Anything to add?
I just want to echo, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of comfort knowing how much everybody is saying communication, because it means that we're in the same place. But yes, communication. The other aspect is, and it's interesting because you were talking earlier about kids that are playing collegiately now that played in high school. And we're not, from my side, we're not seeing a lot of those just yet. It is very new in high school, and slowly, I have one, I mean, making their way to college, but I think that conversation will be a lot different in 5 years, which is awesome, because I love how many people in the high school space are really getting into this conversation. But it is really important what Ian was talking about in regards to being coached. These kids have never been coached before. And that is a huge need to understand. And that's where those soft skills come into play. Is if you're playing college football, you've probably been playing football since you were 5 and had 7,000 coaches your entire life drilling this into you. You've been developing these skills that you're bringing to the table on your own. And I know that that world is pivoting and that's shifting, but it's an important thing to keep in mind as people in the high school space or K through 12 space are investing in esports. You have to invest in coaching as well, because these kids really need to develop those skills that are developed from a coaching perspective. And I do think a lot of folks jump right into the esports space without really understanding the need to develop those skills for these players. And once they do, like what everybody has been talking about, it makes a world of difference. But just understanding the fact that it doesn't just work by building a computer lab. You have to invest in these kids, and you have to invest in the skills that they're going to develop as well. And we see positivity on the other side when you do.
Yeah, I would like to just throw in on theirs. I think a lot of people just don't realize how much planning and preparation goes into our competition, especially if you want to think about a game like League of Legends. We're talking about 150 different characters where they have a bunch of different abilities, and these students need to know every character and what they do and how they effectively impact the game. And then we're also talking about, oh, as coaches, now we have to talk about different timings and methods and be able to bring all that together and go out there and showcase our skills. So, you know, just like a football team prepares to go into a match, so do our esports athletes. And at the same time, like, we're teaching these kids how to show up on time, show up to your match on time, show up to practice on time, and, you know, be prepared and ready to go into our matches. And I think once the students start to feel comfortable inside the match, they also start to showcase, you know, exactly all their comfortabilities, and they're loud and they're proud. And I think something that is really important that we at the collegiate level are doing, we're allowing them to be loud and proud, but we're also teaching them, after you are loud and proud, and rather if you win or lose, you go say good game to the person that you just played against. Because I think sometimes when they're at home, they can be toxic and they don't say those things, but we're teaching them, hey, this is what you need to do. Be respectful to your other opponent, and then also be respectful to adults and anyone who's playing the game while you're under our umbrella, which really is something that I'm not saying that, you know, everyone is toxic in the game, but it's something that our culture was prevalent to, and now we're trying to push it out of the way and make sure that it doesn't come back.
Thank you. Is there any other comments before we have some closing slide from Laura and Griffin? I know that Sari is going to type in an answer to your question. I also saw a question a little bit earlier about college scholarships. What is needed in order to be competitive for college scholarships? Is there anybody that can jump in on that answer really quickly?
I mean, I can. I certainly think that at my previous institution in Untitled Arizona, we do award esports scholarships for student athletes. And I think obviously there's a good grasp of the game is required and you have to be talented and dedicated. But I mean, just jumping off this soft skills conversation, before I even take a student to a tryout, I vet them. I vet them and I want to make sure that they're a cultural fit for what we're trying to do, that they understand how to communicate as a team, that they understand that they're on a team and not an individual. It's a really hard process, I would say, actually, to find the right students, right? And especially when just like we've talked about, they haven't been through this process before. So you have to have a lot of, you know, leeway with them and understand that they're learning as well. But you know, you're looking for the holistic student. You know, you're not, in my mind, I'm never looking for just what's the highest rank. There's so many other questions that go through this process, because I'm looking for the best student athlete. I'm looking for the best, you know, potential leaders for the program. I'm looking for the best people that'll help elevate the other 6-7 members on the team and that'll support them. Because you know, I mean, once we really get into it, being a student athlete's tough. It's hard. There's a big time commitment. You have to be very disciplined, and you can't do that by yourself. You have to, you know, rely on me, you have to rely on your teammates, and you have to help all of us. And you know, that's a hard thing to grasp when you're just coming out of high school and never having been on a team before, you know.
So Ian, when I'm in Arizona in 2 weeks, you'll help me get teams started and pathways started in all of the high schools in the state of Arizona, as well as every other state. This is the purpose of this new area of interest, just so that everybody is aware of that we are going to offer the opportunity for students at the high school level to have a series of academic esports courses at the same time that they're actually playing, and that they're on their club teams or they're on a varsity team at the high school level, so that you as directors and your coaches have even more students that you can vet, and maybe you can even vet them through their high school coaches, so that we have that seamless pathway from high school to university opportunities. And those that are playing in the recreational spaces at the high school level, they then have those opportunities in the orbital careers. And I know Sari mentioned many of them, as well as everybody else in those are what we call in CTE arts and AV, shoutcaster, broadcasters, all of the technical areas that go along with the streamcasters and so forth, that go along with this career in esports. So Laura, can you put the last slide up that has your information and my information?
Absolutely.
And I want to thank all 5 of you. Please I want everybody to keep in touch with me, participate in the next set of webinars that we're going to be having, which will be in September and October. They're already up on the ACTE website, and you know, our sponsorship with Mastery Coding, we appreciate it so much, because again, that helps our division. And I thank everybody for coming today.
Thank you all so much. And again, we'll make sure to get out the recording of this webinar today, as well as the contact information for our awesome panelists. On behalf of ACT, I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today, and thank you attendees for joining us. I certainly learned a lot about esports and the connections to academics, and I look forward to to learning even more throughout the series. I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.